Hello and welcome, my name is Talon. I'm back with another tutorial for Factorio, this time for the Helmod Factory Planner mod. As you progress through the game, the products of your early buildings will become resources for others. However, buildings produce their goods at different rates. Without a balanced ratio of producers to consumers, parts of your factory will slow down as buildings wait either for resources or space to output their products, all the while consuming power and emitting pollution. You can calculate the most efficient ratios yourself, but Factorio is a game all about automation. Enter Helmod. After installing the mod, a new button will be added to the top left of the screen. Click this to bring up the Helmod interface. The UI can be intimidating at first, but once you get the hang of some of the basics, it will become an invaluable tool to help you build your factory. Let's dive straight in and plan part of that now. One of the first things you'll want to automate is the production of Science Pack 1s. With the Production Line tab open, click the Add a Recipe button. On the right, the Recipe Selector dialog will appear. You can navigate to the product you want at the bottom as you would with the crafting window, or you can filter products by name. If you don't know the name of the product, but you know one of its ingredients, you can filter by those instead. By default, only products you have researched are available. If you're planning for products you haven't researched yet, check the Show Disable box to include them in the results. Go ahead and click the Science Pack 1. The Recipe Selector dialog disappears and the screen switches to the Production Block tab. If you selected the wrong product by mistake and want to remove it, you can click the X button at the top to remove the current production block. Now that we have a product selected, we need to decide the rate at which we want to produce them. On the left hand side of the screen are options for time intervals ranging from 1 second to 24 hours. Clicking any of the options changes the production rate for the selected production line only. By default, this is set to an interval of 1 second. Next, we need to select how many of a product we want produced per interval. Click the products icon under the output section to edit it. From here, you can set the quantity. You can set either an arbitrary amount at the top or let Helmod calculate how many you need in order to keep a given belt full. The amount doesn't need to be a whole number, so if instead of producing 1 item per second, you want 1 item every 2 seconds, by doing a little bit of simple maths, you can enter in 0.5 for the quantity. Let's set this to 2 for now and click the Save button. The values on the Production Block tab have now changed, with everything calculated to produce 2 science packs per second. As well as the science packs produced, you can also see the ingredients required and the power consumed. When you change the time interval, the values are recalculated, though this usually only affects the number of factory buildings required and therefore the total power consumption. If instead of a fixed production rate, you have a fixed number of factories you want to use, for instance if you're trying to balance an existing setup, you can enable the Computing by Factory option and enter the number of factories producing the final product. By default, the type of assembling machine used is the Assembling Machine 3, which you won't have access to at the start of the game. Clicking either the Recipe, Factory or Beacon icons will bring up the Edit Recipe dialog. From here you can change the type of assembling machine used for that recipe. If you want to change the defaults, you can do this by going to Options, Mod Settings, and under Per Player tab, change the factory default level. Once you have the required research, modules become available, giving you access to certain buffs to production, such as speed or efficiency. You can select which modules you plan to use, and see their effects on power and resource usage. Similarly, you can add modules to the beacons. If your block has a large number of factories, you may wish to break the block into smaller, more manageable sub-blocks. You can do this by selecting or placing a limit on the number of factories per sub-block. Each icon now shows the amount per sub-block, as well as the original total. To produce the science packs, we need to keep this production block supplied with copper plates and iron gears. Gears themselves are produced in assembling machines, and copper plates are the products of furnaces. So how do we calculate how many of those we need? Well, if you click the icons under the ingredients column, Helmod adds them as additional recipes to be built in the block. As such, the required resources have changed. We can break the recipes down further until we get to the number of miners required. There is a bug in Helmod which allows you to keep breaking recipes down even though miners themselves don't require resources. To remove a recipe, simply click the X button associated with it. If a recipe produces more of an item than is used by the block, for instance if I increase this to 200%, any excess is added to the output of the block. You can navigate back to the production line tab either by clicking the tab itself or by clicking one of the icons on this row. Each icon represents a separate production line. Similarly to the production block tab, you can click the icons under the input column. This creates a new production block. Unlike the previous one, this production block is linked, which means its ratios are calculated to match the demands of the other blocks. If I increase the amount of science packs produced, the number of gears increases as well. While it is linked, the production rate cannot be changed manually, unless I unlink the block as so. Linking is useful if two or more blocks share a common product that you'd rather produce from a centralized location. For example, let's add a block for the Science Pack 2 and expand the recipes so that it requires gears. Back on the production line tab, you may notice that the output of the gears block hasn't changed, and the line still needs to be supplied with additional gears. This is because a block is only linked to those above it. As soon as I move the Science Pack 2 block up, the output of the gears block is recalculated to meet the demands of both Science Pack blocks. Under the production line section, you can see the total power consumption. As well as planning the factories, we can also plan the generators that we need by opening the power tab. So we need 4.9 megawatts. Simply click the Add Power button and the Edit Power dialog appears. Select which type of generators we want to use, in this case a steam engine, and enter in the amount of power required. Bear in mind that some types of generators need secondary buildings. For example, a steam engine needs a boiler, and accumulators can store any excess power from solar panels to keep your factory running at night. You can keep adding power until you get the desired configuration. The Resources tab will show you the list of all the ingredients needed by the production line, while the Summary tab shows the generators, factories, and modules required. The Resources section only seems to be populated if there is any water required, and the Generators section seems to include more generators than that suggested by the Power tab. Why this is, I don't know. Once you're happy with the production line, it's time to build out the individual blocks. Rather than have to keep reopening the whole Helmod interface each time to refer to the plan, you can pin the interface to the screen. You can select the level of detail, as well as minimize or maximize the dialog, and then close it when done. If you've chosen to break the block into subblocks, the number of factories will reflect the number in one subblock. As well as planning your production lines for products, you can also design them for research. Let's create a new production line and click Add Technology. While it's not efficient to create a separate production line for each individual piece of research, you can use one of the endgame research items to help you design line producing all of the science packs. That's it for my tutorial on Helmod. There's a few things I haven't shown, mostly because I've never used them and can't find any information about how or when you would. The first is the matrix solver, which can be found under the production block, and the others are the statistics tab and the administration tab. If you know anything about how either of these work, feel free to drop it in a comment below. I hope you found the video helpful. If so, please consider clicking the like button and subscribe if you want to see more. If there are any other tutorials you'd like to see, feel free to suggest them below. As always, my name is Talon. Thanks for watching.